about the first time that you came on the show. You helped us out getting this thing all fired up. It's been a long time, over a year and a half, I think.
It's about, I think it was 2 years ago.
You said it popped up on your timeline?
Ago, yeah. Yeah,
all
it popped
right.
up on my, you asked me, and then it popped up Facebook the next day. So I was like, I got to do it.
Yeah, so it just made sense. Sometimes things just align and it works out, right? So I know you got a lot of things going on in your life. We can maybe get to that a little bit later. But it's good to see you again. I'm glad that you're out here doing this. I know that Porsche flows through your veins. This is something that's, you know, just in you, right? Once this gets inside, you can't get rid of it.
My whole life,
yeah,
because of my father, who's here watching.
All right, cool. Hi, Dad. How you doing? So, you know, I think we can kick it off and just maybe bring some people up to speed as to where all this Porsche stuff started for you, Andreas. Like, where did it begin? I know for a lot of people, you know, Porsche maybe is the first remembrance or thing that you remember about being involved with cars. Maybe not. So maybe just talk about that. You know, where did you first get interested in cars, and then maybe where was the first Porsche thing in your life?
Well, it's funny. So it did start like many. It was a father-son relationship. My dad had two 911s, one before me, but he had a 911S that I vaguely remember. Believe it or not, I do actually somehow remember this champagne-colored car. I'm talking about like diapers for some reason. It's like some ingrained early memory in my head. He sold that and got a Mercedes SL, and that was my favorite car because I guess it was his and the top came off, and I thought it could fly. And then he got rid of that, and I was mad, and he got a oak green metallic, which is now a hot color. It wasn't at the time. 79 911 Turbo, 930. So from talking about influential years, you know, from I guess 3 through, we had that car for over 20 years, I'd say. And it was in our family, and we went out every weekend in that car, everything we did. So anything you can remember as a child, just throw a Porsche in the mix. So like to say it runs through the blood, it's...
Well, that's great. I guess I'm going to sort of pick up the torch and maybe carry it for, I've been carrying it. My wife and I have been carrying it maybe for him because our little girls, who aren't so little anymore, one just got engaged 2 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Another one, thank you. And another one is, you know, in college now. But they both grew up riding around in the back seat of our '89 Targa, you know, going to school, going to gymnastics. My wife drove that car for 10 years, you know, every day to work and take it. So that's what they know. So it's kind of cool that you.
That's awesome.
That you you know that
you have like 200,000 miles on that thing, don't you?
215.
Before I finally sold it, long story, it had about 210,000 miles.
Yeah.
So yeah, everyday daily driver.
Yeah, why not? So they have all kinds of great memories, you know, from that car, and it's kind of interesting to hear them talk about it now. Every now and again, you know, you hear a story how they remember. So it's fun. So what was the age though? You said your dad in the first one. How old were you?
I don't even know. It's like, you ever have those weird things you can remember when you really shouldn't be remembering anything? I can picture being at my aunt's house in the back of this car. I don't know how or why.
Okay, that's all. What more do you need to?
It's very strange.
Yeah, you don't need to know more than that.
I remember the color in a weird way.
Yeah, well that's great. You know, it's fun to have these kinds of stories, and it really helps to bring it out with people today, because a lot of young kids today, they don't even think about cars so much. You know, they're thinking, hey, I can just get an Uber anywhere. So, you know, to talk about stories like this and to sort of bring it alive and maybe inspire somebody to say, hey, you know what? Maybe we should get interested in cars, and maybe it should be a Porsche. These guys are talking about some crazy stuff, and maybe, you know, we can do our small part, you know, by doing that right now, right?
The best thing, you know, when I was in sales for a very long time, I was always, you know, preaching and promoting how great the brand was, every aspect of it, and it's amazing to see how much it's grown in the past. I'd say really the past 10 years, it's really exploded. Popularity of Porsche is crazy.
Yeah, it has. It's grown by leaps and bounds.
Different ways, really.
In different ways, and in ways that I think probably as a kid or as you got a little bit older, you never would have thought. You know, I always thought of Porsche as a sports car company. It still is. I always thought of Porsche as an engineering and design firm, which it still is. But now, you know, we're talking about all kinds of different things, and whether it be, you know, sport utilities or four-door cars, or now we're talking about electrification and hybrid cars and all these new technologies. And no matter what it is, Porsche is like right at the head of the spear. You know, trying to bring things to people, give people what they really want, and it's fun to watch and fun to be a part of.
It's going to be interesting to see how the future is going to be interesting.
Yeah,
it's definitely different.
So we won't get off on talking about new stuff so much right now. You brought a pretty cool ride here tonight. So I know you were driving a Cayman for a while recently, but I guess it was time to give that one up. And so talk a little bit about this one, because I remember you telling me a story about a 997 that you purchased, and then I think, well, I'm going to let you tell the story, because I'm not going to get the details right. So maybe you can tell us about this car that you brought tonight.
Sure. So it's the car behind us. It's the most common of all 997s. It's a 2005 911 Carrera. They're readily available. They're all over the place. They're nothing super special from a number standpoint, but they're like all 911s and all Porsches, great cars. So when I was looking for a car, I was trying to figure out what's the best thing that I could use as a daily driver that would give me enough kind of old school feel, but be modern enough to not break the bank for maintenance, because that's really a thing they don't tell you about air-cooled cars.
Right.
I love them, but so...
Minor detail.
Yeah, I actually thought I'd end up with a 996, which I did have a 996 once before, but of course I wanted a 997, same reason everybody else does, because it looks more like a 911, and fenders and headlights and blah, blah, blah. There was a little bit out of my price range, but this one showed up at the dealership at the time and needed a lot of work, and I happened to be right place at the right time and know the right people, so we fixed it up, got it running. The rest is history, really.
So you kept a hold of it, and then you got the Cayman, but then you sold it for a short time, or what happened? There's a little, you got to fill in the gaps there.
Sorry, there's a little more to the story. So I was changing careers, no longer with Porsche, always in my heart, but no longer as my profession. And I was working at Porsche of Orlando, and I did an employee lease on a Cayman, and I sold this wonderful car that I didn't want to sell to a friend of mine, under the condition that he'd sell it back to me once my employee lease ended. So the employee lease ended, and of course
he made good on the promise.
He made good on the promise.
Well, that's a friend. That's a true friend. That's a
Even
Porsche
put new
friend.
tires on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Dude, we all need friends like that. So you were without it for about how long?
2 years.
2
2
years.
years I drove I think we actually even talked about this.
Yeah.
The controversial 4-cylinder 718 Cayman, which fantastic car.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, so much fun in that car.
So now that Cayman is gone now you have this 997 sort of back, and you're just enjoying the heck out of it?
Yeah, I've had people say, do you miss having a new car? And not so much the idea of the new car. I miss having a completely perfect, nothing to worry about car, because that's, always great. But this car, which looks pretty decent, I'd say, has 112,000 miles on it. So.
You see, it's a great story, because these cars in particular, 997s, you're right. It marked a time where Porsche went ahead and put some heritage design back into the 911 that they got a little bit away from in the previous model, the 996. So it really did bring a lot of people back to it and create a lot of excitement about the car when it was introduced, back in 05, I guess was the first year, right? Or late 04?
For the U.S., 05.
For the U.S., yeah.
Commonly you see it as an 04, I guess.
Yeah.
US was
So
05.
it brought a lot of excitement back into it with those design elements, and it's kind of cool because we're seeing that same thing happen now with the new model 911, the 992. But a neat story that I think you'll appreciate. So I had a gentleman that has been in the Central Florida area for years, a big Porsche guy, has owned probably 15 different cars over the years, but never owned a new one. And he came in to where I am now, Porsche South Orlando, with some inspiration from you for those years that we got to know each other a little bit. Now I'm carrying your torch, right? So now
Right.
I'm in the game. And he started to talk to me about, he said, Brian, you know, tell me about this Carrera T. What can you tell me about these cars?
I just want to say the Carrera T is probably the best new Porsche you can buy, in my opinion.
Isn't it? It's awesome.
None of these GT cars, nobody can deny, but we could go into that.
That's another whole deal. So we started talking about it, and he was like, I really think I want to get one of these cars. He goes, I've never owned a new one. I kind of think, so long story short, he ended up buying the car, and he traded in his 997.
Oh, wow.
Right? But that's not where the story ends. The story goes on because within about 2 weeks, a young guy came into the store, probably, late 20s, having a successful sort of early career, and he bought his car. And I gotta tell you, it's so cool to see, sort of that torch being passed, because this guy was just the happiest guy on planet Earth. His first Porsche, and he's got this awesome car, and he loved the story about it too, because this guy, big Porsche guy, driving instructor with the PCA, just all kinds of great experience. And so he knew that he was getting a car.
Talking about.
Yeah, he knew the car that he was getting, and who had it before him, and all the miles that were logged, in that car. So it was just a super special time. So we're talking about Porsche heritage and bringing some classic elements back into the cars. And I think this is kind of a cool segue maybe to talk about Porsche Classic. What does that really mean? And what is really maybe the next classic Porsche or next classic Porsches?
Yeah.
What are they going to be? So what's your opinion on that?
I think a lot of folks get tied up in the classic at the moment and not what can be the classic of the future. So I'll give you an example. You ask anybody now, and they give you the likely suspects of the cars you have to own. You have to get a 964 series, 993 series, of course the 70s cars, 80s cars. These are the cars you have to get. These are the ones. I don't disagree, but in many ways, there are new classics being made. So when I was in sales, there'd be people talking about that car, that it had to be the perfect car, and if it wasn't this GT or turbo or whatever, they didn't even want to look at it without ever actually experiencing something like a just basic Carrera.
Right.
And the funny thing, the guy I sold this car to had a Boxster Spider that I sold him. Awesome car. But he drove this as a daily driver. He didn't want to sell it back to me. He goes, this car is so much fun. And it's funny because it was so much fun for reasons most people wouldn't think of. It's so much fun because it's only 325 horsepower. Because it forces you to work. Because there's no electronics, like earlier cars.
Right.
The difference between a car like this and an earlier car, not completely, but you can drive this every day, pretty realistically.
You can still work on this car. If you're the kind of guy who wants to do your own oil changes and do some basic maintenance and maybe some other lighter mechanical maintenance, it doesn't take a lot of extra equipment. You're not having to plug in a computer for every little thing to figure out what's wrong. So it's still a car that if you want to be the guy to take care of it and maintain it, you still got a shot at doing that.
You can get very involved with this car, just like an air-cooled car. Maybe not just like an air-cooled car, but you can still get very involved. You can still put your hands on things, touch things, get dirty, and understand to a point what's going on. Still follows the basic rules. I think everything up to the end of the 997 era pretty much followed that. The standout for me, and why I'd say that a 997 would be a great future classic or something to hold on to, the 996 is a wonderful car. I'll argue that the 996 is a better car because it's another 250 pounds lighter, but it just doesn't have the look that a lot of people.
Yeah, it doesn't have the classic style, some of those elements.
A lot of us are jaded. I mean, I'll be honest, you put it next to a 996. For me, I'm going to pick a 997 because that without a doubt, that's a 911. People won't get confused. Maybe it's a Boxster. Maybe it's a, you know, we're not sure what it is.
Yeah.
But between that look, that heritage look, and just the fantastic way it drives, future classic all day.
Future classic. So we're going to check the box and say 997 is definitely going to be a future Porsche classic.
Definitely. And I don't think you have to get, you know, a GT model. You don't have to get a turbo. You don't have to get a GTS. It doesn't even have to be an S. I technically could have got an S. And really my thinking was, you know what? An S is like 50 pounds heavier. I know it sounds silly, but I was like light as possible. You know, light as possible. All the most special 911s have always been light as possible. So really that had a big to do with it. For me.
Yeah, that's great. For you know, the previous generation, the 996, I love the 996 factory aero kit cars.
Yeah,
like, to me, those are cool cars. Did you have one of those?
It wasn't factory, but it looked factory.
Yeah, it looked factory.
Yeah.
Those are cool cars too.
Yeah.
So 997 definitely checks the box. It doesn't matter whether it's the first generation, which was through what, 08, 09?
05 through 08.
08, right?
You know, and you read the forums, a lot of people are like, you gotta get an 09 because that's this and that. And I'm like, you gotta get an 05 because it doesn't have any of that.
Right.
Any of those good things.
Yeah.
It has less electronic and I love them all still.
Yeah, yeah. So if 997 is a good future classic, what do you think is another one? Like, what do you know, I think of classics as sort of the era that ended in the 80s for air-cooled. We have an 89 car. It was really the last year that, you know, in the factory, most everything was still pretty much hand-built.
Yeah.
You know, they weren't measuring out the welds. It was kind of like, all right, this one goes here, this one goes there, and it's all good. And you can see that in the cars, you know, from that generation to the next. So that's kind of for me where I think, okay, those are, in my mind, the classics because of not only the styling, but how they were assembled. And I think about looking at pictures of the factory being a classic factory almost. I think about that. So that's my way of saying, okay, well, if it's an 89 or earlier, it's a classic. I haven't quite crossed the bridge to say a 996 or a 997 is a classic yet, right? That's how I think.
It's really hard to look at something that still, in our eyes, looks very modern.
Yeah.
Think of a classic, but the car's 15 years old.
Yeah.
You know, they're getting up there. 996s are 20 years old now? 99?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, they're right there.
They're right there.
But it's like different eras of classic. You know, it's like everybody can have their classic. I think folks get worried about what's considered to be a classic. And my biggest argument is go find your classic. Like, go find your future classic. Like, enjoy, you know what? Enjoy it while it's cheap, because it's not going to be cheap.
Oh, yeah.
All those cars, you're 89, my dad's 79, those were all cheap cars.
Yeah.
It was no big deal. What do you want to do? I graduated high school, I went to college, I got my license, you know, all the normal stuff, and I was like, oh, I saved my money, I'm gonna go buy a 911. I got 10 grand, let's go. What do I want? I don't know. 60s car, all day. 70s car, all day. 80s car, up until about 84. For 10,000 bucks?
Yeah.
You can't do that now.
Yeah, you can't do it
it's
anymore.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we don't look at what's accessible to us, and we try to you know, fall in love with Instagram and the romance, and like, oh man, this guy, this Magnus Walker guy, I tell you, my father was Magnus Walker. Everything Magnus Walker did, my dad did. Like, he didn't quite look the same, and he didn't have an Instagram account.
Right, yeah.
It's funny because so many people made these same stories, but they weren't celebrated because it wasn't as accessible.
Yeah.
And then new generation.
Yeah, so how do we do that now? You know, you see a lot of these things out there in the social media world of people sharing cars, but I got to be honest with you, I haven't found this every show, man. Like clockwork, that train comes by. I haven't really found a lot of young people still now getting involved in the brand, and a very, you know, close friend of mine from back in the days that I worked in racing, you know, we've talked about this many times, you know, whatever you do, if you're involved with Porsche today in 2020, And if you really love the brand and you're really passionate about the brand, and you're not doing something to bring in younger buyers, younger interest, then, you know, rethink it, you know, because someone's got to carry this torch. And now with all these new technologies, you know, how do you bring them in? Do you talk about the new technologies? Do you tell them stories about the older cars, about the relationships that you have with the cars, with your parents, with other people that were significant in your life? You know, what do you do? How do you connect with younger kids about these cars? And I think, in my opinion, you do it by getting them in the car, getting them to feel the car, getting them to smell the car, getting them on a ride in the car. What do you think? I mean,
no one can ever deny that a ride can't change a few minds. I mean, that's for sure. I think it's a little trickier nowadays.
Yeah, how do we do it? Like, how do we make that happen?
Well, I've had the good fortune that people say, oh, you're young, but I'm 38, so I'm kind of getting older now. So from what I see, it's really this social media movement. You know, it's amazing how many people can tell you why something is good or great and have never actually touched it or felt it. That's one of the most amazing things. So I've always had a personal commitment to, I guess, lead by example. You know, I'm very approachable. Some people still look at this car and they assume it's like a $100,000 car. You know, because, oh man, it's a Porsche.
All day long.
How do you afford that? I have
sure.
Story just not too long ago. Guy pulls up gas station in a new pickup truck, diesel, whatever, and he's like, "How do you afford the gas on that thing?" I was like, "Are you serious right now?" I'm like, "You just put $150 in your tank. I can't afford that.
It's going to be gone
crazy."
tomorrow.
So yeah, I mean, I've always had this idea. People that don't know associate Porsche, Ferrari, Lamborghini, Bentley, Rolls. It has a luxury look to it, so people assume certain things. Yeah. And I've always just been crazy honest. You know, it's like, people are like, oh my God, that's amazing. Thank you, I appreciate that. But it's a $20,000 car. Go get your own.
Right.
Like, it's out there.
Yeah.
You can find them.
You just have to encourage people to do it, lead them to it, you know, teach them about it, whatnot. But I couldn't agree with you more. I have people all the time come into the dealership and they say, hey, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for that, and they're very narrowed down, which you appreciate as
it's always a good thing
as a salesperson,
to
because
yeah,
but at the same time they're looking for like this unicorn car. Yes. And they think that they're not going to be satisfied until they find that very specific car and that color with that, and they've never even driven one. Yep. They don't know anything about it. So I think it does all boil down to, you know, trying to share experiences and give people experiences and encourage other people that are around the brand and in this culture that we're in to do more of that. I think we can get caught up sometimes in just what we're doing every day, and we're not being thoughtful about what do we need to do to bring sort of this next group in, right?
It's a good point. I mean, you have your niches at car meets. You have your niches at this place. You know, you have niches everywhere. There's the guys that got the new cars. There's the guys that only go to the track. There's the guys that won't go to the track. There's the guys that only polish their cars. The guys, you know, and I think there's room for everybody. You know, I mean, there really is. I think ultimately, if you break that barrier, you talk to somebody who doesn't necessarily, like I wouldn't, nothing about this is concourse, so I would look like he's not a concourse guy. Well, I'm not for myself, but I can absolutely appreciate what you do, you know, or oh, there's a roll cage in that car. He doesn't go to the track. Why would he do such a thing? Yeah. I don't know, because I like it. Well, that's a long story, but anyway. But, you know, things like that, you know. There can be a time on my way home that I catch a turn in a certain way, and it makes me the happiest person alive.
Right.
And, yeah, that little modification I did to my car that saved me 5 pounds, maybe I felt it, maybe I didn't. But I think I did, and my day is great.
Yeah.
You know? And been on the track, I've gone to the track, and the track guys only go to the track. Porsches are only track cars, blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's not true at all. Yeah. At all.
Right.
But I appreciate it, and I've been there, and I've done it. And if I wasn't a triathlon guy, a whole nother part of my life, spending all my money on that, I would take this to the track. Yeah. So I'm waiting until I blow a knee or something.
Have you ever played golf? Have you ever played golf?
No,
never been a golfer.
Guy.
So, sort of, you know, when you play golf, no matter how good or bad you are, you're going to hit more bad shots than you hit good shots, just
Sure.
on average. But there's always, it never fails. In every round, I don't play. I used to play more golf than I do today. I haven't played probably 2 years now, right? But I grew up around a golf course and enjoyed doing it. And there's always, back to this comment about how the car hooked up around a corner and just makes you feel good. In every round of golf I've ever played in my life, there was always that one shot that you hit in a round of 18 holes that was just the best shot. And that shot, you say to yourself, okay, I'm coming back for another round, you know, and you could have hit, you know, 80 other shots that were terrible, but that one shot, it was just such a beautiful shot. It felt so good. It looked so good that you say, I'm coming back for more. And that's kind of like what it is in a car when it's just right.
It's kind of like a good analogy for owning a Porsche in flat, boring Florida.
Right.
What do you do? It's like you drive 1,000 miles and you get that 1 mile of road that it just changes everything.
Yeah, like here we got to go out to Claremont or wherever, Sugarloaf Mountain or whatever those hills are out there, right, and try to burn it up and have some fun. So what do you think? What do you think about all this? About how Porsche looks at classic? So I know that they say, hey, a Porsche from a parts standpoint, in terms of how they support the older cars, the car's got to be, I think, out of production for 10 years for them to consider it classic and for them to give a little different attention to it. What do you think about the whole movement of Porsche and building more parts for the classics, and what do you think about their whole approach to it?
It's funny. I think I have a couple mixed approaches. Ultimately, it's great. It shows their dedication to the folks like us that have older cars. You know, they're not. I've had plenty of people ask me, you know, like, oh, how do you get parts for your car if it's 15 years old? It's like, there's parts everywhere for that. It's not a big deal. But there's parts for all the models. I think it's an amazing dedication from the brands and how much they love their cars, their people. It says a lot. The only thing is the company has, I feel, caught on to the trend of how much the cars have gone up in value, and they've adjusted prices and parts.
Yeah, they sure have, haven't they?
There was a little bit of a time frame there where you still would have had to pay good money to buy an air-cooled car, but if it wasn't a great air-cooled car, you could have went and took it somewhere and like got the engine redone and got the body done, and you really have something like. But now I think everything's caught up, so prices have raised, everything's raised.
Yeah.
It's a catch-22. If you want to buy an old classic, the support is there. Fantastic. It will last forever. That is what a company needs to do. But they've kind of adjusted their pricing.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the younger guy, to try to get into those models, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough. Like, you could use the 996 as the easiest gateway for a 911. I still say Cayman Boxster, fantastic car. That's the way to go. But for a 911, 996, and you get a young guy coming in and he has to bring it in for service, and then he has a big bill if it's not an independent. We have some great independents here in Orlando. I worked at the dealer, you know. I'd have friends go there, and they're like, man, I just got this $1,000 bill.
Yeah.
And
it's a Porsche.
Yeah, you know, I had a Toyota whatever before, and it only cost me $200.
Yeah.
It's like,
So it all goes back to this question, you know, how do we keep the brand interesting for younger people? And, you know, or is it just one of those deals where we just have to accept the fact that, you know, people love Porsche for a lot of different reasons, and at the end of the day, there is a cost to admission, and it's not inexpensive. Especially for the new cars, and it's always going to be that way because Porsche, I guess, is now the #1 luxury brand in the world for just about anything.
It's crazy.
So, you know, you just have to understand that. But I think it's fun to at least, you know, have conversation about how do we keep younger people interested in it? How do they get in? If they can't get in by mom or dad just writing a check to get them whatever car they want, you know, how can we encourage them? And I think we answered a few questions about that tonight, you know, how people can do that. And there's a lot of different options for them to do it.
It's nicer to see too them embracing some of their fun past, which they were always a very secretive car company. They're finally like coming out from behind the curtain to say like, hey, we can have fun too. You know, like everybody remembers the Bad Boys 3.6 turbo, 94 3.6 turbo. that was on every kid's wall, you know? I mean, and what do they do? Now they have a sequel to the movie. I don't know if it's good. I don't know, but there's a new 911.
Yeah.
That's a great move.
Yeah.
I think it's a great move. Putting Porsches in video games, putting them online.
Yeah, in the gaming world, like I'm not even in tune to that, but I'm sure that
I'm not either.
You know, it's out there.
GT2 RS was released on, was it Forza, one of those games?
Yeah.
That was the official release. It was on the game.
Yeah.
And that, I had more people asking about that car based
because
off
of
a video game.
Yeah.
And, you know, most of them weren't there to buy, but the seed was planted. So...
And that will plant the seed right there,
that
too.
Works
if they hear that, right?
Yeah.
And that was a Macan, the smaller sport utility that we have.
Yeah.
And that sounded pretty exciting.
Yeah, that actually sounds pretty good.
Well, so we sort of talked through Classic a little bit. What you're right, we're in agreement. 997 is definitely going to be a future. Is that insane? That's a Macan. That's insane.
Sounds like my old 996.
Sounds like a GT car.
Sounds like my 996 with straight pipes that when I lived downtown. I don't know how I didn't get arrested.
Hey, so if we think about that, I don't know. 997 is definitely a good classic, and I think we've made a good case for that just because of how we feel about it. But I don't know. What do you think about these newer hybrid cars and all this electrification movement? Do you think this is really going to happen? Porsche has said that by 2025, half of our unit production is going to come from hybrid electric or fully electric cars. So do we just keep the faith? We got to believe in the mothership and say, hey, they've said that this is what's going to happen, that the market will follow that's where we are. What's your opinion?
So I've always been a less is more type person, and the Taycan is not a less is more vehicle. It's very Porsche, but it's very Porsche in a different way. It's very Porsche from an intelligence standpoint, from a scientific standpoint, but it's a big, heavy car, and I wasn't completely sold on it. I don't know that I still am, but I drove the thing the other day, and I got into my car, and I'm like, besides from an emotional standpoint, what is the point of coolant, oil, all these mechanical moving parts, having to, get your RPM up, having to do all this? And the only thing that I can walk away from, honestly, is because I like it.
Yeah, right.
Is that enough?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
For you?
I think, for me, sure, but I'm just a small part of the equation. I think the technology is just going to continue to improve. They're investing billions, and no company's going to invest billions without, standing behind
having a pretty good idea that this is going to work.
Yeah, and I think the writing is on the wall for it. I think the combustion engine will go the way of kind of like the horse. We used horses to get around, right? Horse and buggy to get around, and cars were crazy. Who's going to drive a car? Those things are unreliable. A horse is more reliable. And now people still have horses, but they have them at barns, and they take them to shows, and they race them, and they do things like that.
Yeah.
And that may be the way of the combustion engine. I don't know.
So the jury's still out for you.
That Taycan was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I've not experienced. I've driven just about everything. Every Porsche, I've driven Ferraris, I've driven Lamborghinis, I've driven everything, and 918 Spider did not deliver what a Taycan delivered in terms of oh my God, this is insane. I'm not taking my foot off the gas. I still have my foot on or not gas, whatever it is, throttle. I still have my foot on the throttle, and I feel like I'm going to die, but I'm not taking my foot off for some reason, and I'm still going. It's still going.
Yeah, it just
totally crazy.
Yeah.
Just totally crazy.
Yeah. Well, I'm the jury's still out for me in terms of how big it's going to get. It's going to get big, but how big is it going to get? I don't know. In what time frame? It seems like today most things accelerate much quicker than we anticipate or we think. So I'm guessing that's what's going to happen, but it is going to be interesting to see what actually happens in the next 5 years.
I think for the Porsche enthusiast, if they do build this electric Boxster Cayman, if that happens, then I think people are going to start saying,
Yeah, well, maybe this is part of the big plan for Porsche. I don't know.
I'd say so.
They came and said that the Taycan was going to be an $80,000 to $100,000 car, and then when it actually came out, it became more like $150,000 or $200,000 car, and it sort of moved some people out of the thinking just from a financial standpoint. But now they come back around, and maybe they introduce a more entry-level price point. In Cayman or Boxster or in Macan, they've already said that the next generation of Macan, which is not too far down the road, is going to be a hybrid, could be electric, and now you can open up a conversation with people who are saying, the Taycan's cool, but it's just too expensive right now for me. I just can't see spending that kind of money. So maybe it is part of the plan. Maybe Porsche's got it all figured out, and like I said, we just got to keep the faith and know that it is going to all work out. And but they're still going to be there to support the guys and gals that love the combustion engine. They're going to continue to support classic efforts, whatever that means, even though maybe people have different opinions about it. And the brand will continue to grow and thrive in the future. That's what I hope, and that's probably what you hope too, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I hope. I mean, I used to always say, that's my team. That's the team I root for. The industry is going to change. It's not Porsche's responsibility to lead the way or to change everyone's thinking. It's not Tesla's responsibility. It's not any car manufacturer's responsibility. It's just what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So how is our brand going to differentiate themselves from the other brands? I'm pleasantly surprised that the Taycan definitely differentiates itself.
Yeah. When you see from the concept car to the finished car, how close they were, and then when you drive it to see how good it is for the first generation of this car, that's pretty crazy.
Totally insane.
Yeah, totally insane,
it's just right off the bat to take everything you've ever known about automotive anything and just blow your
Just chuck
minds.
it. I mean, in our lifetimes, we've never seen anything as much change as we're about to see, right now, and as much change as this car is bringing to the table. Yeah. So, man, it's been fun to have you out here again and to see you.
It's always a pleasure.
I know you've got a big day.
Maybe it'll be warmer next time.
Yeah, maybe it'll be warmer next time. You got a big day coming up this Saturday.
Yep.
You're tying the knot.
Yes, sir.
You got a lot of fun ahead of you. So
she drives a Porsche.
That's right. And you said it was a Cayman, right?
2006 Cayman S.
Awesome. Good for her.
Another great future classic.
Yeah.
Cheap to get into.
I buy that argument all day long. That's awesome. So, wishing you guys all the best in that. For you to say yes to come out and do this, number one, the week leading up to your wedding. I mean, that's pretty awesome.
If she's watching, I'm sorry.
That's pretty awesome. And then, on a night like this where it's nice and cold like this, thanks again. So really appreciate it. Keep us in mind. If you got some other ideas, we'd love to have more conversation with you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
You always bring some cool stuff to the table when you come and visit us. So you're welcome anytime.
Thank you,
you don't have to have the invite. Just call me and let me know, and we'll dream something up.
Cool. I'll just bring an extra mic and jump in.
Yeah. And I think, actually, your dad should be, I mean, if he was the dude driving Porsche way back then, maybe he's got some stories to tell us. That
he's got a lot of stories. The problem is you got to pull him back a little bit. So
so that's where you got a little of this from?
This is a family show, I think. So
okay. All right. Well, we're not controlled by the network, so we can say whatever we want.
Maybe next time.
All right. So I think he is primed. I just primed the pump right there. He's coming back. All right, well, cool. Well, again, thanks for coming out here. And I think we're going to wrap up unless I can find a guy who brought one of these Taycans out here tonight. Do you see Chris anywhere? Did he stay? I don't know. Maybe Chris left. Well, we were going to do a little walk around, but I don't think he was. He just wanted to bring the car and let people take a look at it.
Yeah, I haven't gone to the training, so don't ask me how to show it. That's on you, buddy.
I know. It's all right. I'll take it. All right, so again, thanks for coming out and joining us. That's going to be it for Porsche Night. What is this? January 2020 edition. We look forward to coming out here next month. We'll probably have a lot to talk about with all the goings-on about, 60 miles north of here with the Daytona races this weekend, the Rolex 24. So maybe we'll have some cool things to talk about next month to do that. So that's it. That's all for tonight. We'll see you next time.